Welcome to What Would Sabrina Say? I'm Sabrina Dong, and I'm excited you're joining me today. In this podcast, I dive into mental health topics on relationships and overall well-being. With over 20 years of experience as a licensed clinical social worker, I share insights and invite expert guests who are passionate about making a positive difference. I started this podcast because I was frustrated with the often misleading or recycled information in social media involving self-help and the mental health field. My goal is to provide you with genuine, useful content that's educational and informative. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you find our conversations both enlightening and empowering. I'm glad you're here.
Welcome. Thank you so much, David Krasky, for being here today. You're a licensed school psychologist, and looking forward to learning so much about you and your expertise and understanding the topic today about when anxiety and parenting can kind of create some challenges within the dynamics of the family, within interactions, when it becomes pressure for children, that sense of protection, and understanding the difference between anxiety versus maybe what's natural in parenting, to kind of worrying what happens. So thank you again for taking the time to talk about that today.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So if you'd like to tell us about yourself and your journey.
Sure, I'd love to. So I'm a licensed school psychologist. So my training is in assessment and interventions for children, teens, young adults, usually when it comes to anything that affects them regarding school, their social life, behavior. I've worked in private schools. I've worked in public schools. In the last 15 years, I've been working primarily in private practice. And I also do therapy, counseling with kids, teens, young adults, and their parents, and really focusing on a lot of practical strategies with the goal in mind that our children need to be able to survive and hopefully thrive on their own when they're adults. So everything is in the scope of they need to learn these skills for their own betterment. So whenever I'm working with the family or the parents, and we oftentimes work together or recap at the end of sessions, we always keep that goal in mind of we want them to be able to do these things on their own. We want them to be able to function. And we want you, mom and dad, comfortable that eventually when your children are not with you anymore, you're not up every night worrying that they're eating, sleeping, staying safe, taking care of themselves.
Right, so being able to trust that you've passed on the tools and guidance for children, teens to make the decisions that are healthier for them.
Yeah. And setting up the environment, or at least giving them the space like children have for thousands of years to be able to explore, grow, make mistakes, learn from them. And like you said, develop all these skills necessary to really thrive in this world.
Right. There can be such a challenge when there's this fear of failure and making mistakes when not being given the opportunity to correct things or to make changes from it. So it's really helpful, I think, to give that guidance, and looking forward to hearing about your book as well. Congratulations on raising future adults and hearing how there's some great and helpful tips there as well too for parents.
Yeah, thank you. Well, to your point, when it comes to failure, I love the teachings of, there's a woman named Carol Dweck, who she coined this term called growth mindset, which they used originally in academia, where you're teaching children that failure is good. That's how we learn. And it just means you haven't gotten to where you need to be yet. But it can be applied to anything. So for example, I work with some younger kids that there's some impulsivity or behavioral issues. Then the parents want to avoid any interaction that might lead to something bad. So it might lead to like the kids getting into a fight, or this one broke this, and then it's embarrassment by the parent, and oh my God. And so it's avoiding, where we tweak the mindset to no, like they need more practice, and this is good. It's okay, because if you're anxious and you're nervous about your kid making this mistake, whether it's school or behavior or social or anything, they're going to be more anxious. And usually that leads to more negative outcomes, right? Like when the kid's too stressed, then the behaviors are going to be sometimes even worse. So we do a lot of teaching here of, no, it's all about practice. It's almost using that sport mentality of even Michael Jordan kept practicing. Even when he was the best, he kept practicing because there's no perfection. You just always want to get better. So I use that term a lot with the kids and parents to get them to not be so black and white of their thinking of failure, mistake, bad, stress to, oh, we're just not there yet. We're still working on it. We still need practice.
So it's giving that opportunity to practice social skills.
Social skills, coping skills, problem solving skills. And then what our job, I always, and part of it's in the book as well, is talking about we're the ones where we can help get them to recognize what's working and what's not. And that if they are too hard on themselves, which a lot of kids, sometimes it's more the kids than the parents, we can remind them and pull back and tell them, it's all about the effort. It's all about them trying. And when they have failed or not met expectations, they're still learning. So we've learned what doesn't work, or we've learned what we need to still work on. And it's great, especially for the kids and young adults that have more of this kind of perfectionistic all or none thinking. I need the 100%. I need to be first place, where that in itself, and I know you brought up anxiety, that's too much. That's too much stress, and it oftentimes leads to poor performance.
I find sometimes, too, what brings on the anxiety is the expectations don't match the developmental age or where the child is at. And that can be hard as well for children.
Especially now, because I'm sure, we were talking a little before about us being born in the previous generation, us Gen Xers, where the pendulum often swings, right? Where the stuff I'm seeing children now, what they're expected to do at 6, developmentally, it seemed like we were expected to do that at 8 or 9, whether it's sitting, concentrating, doing work at home for homework, whether it's certain independent skills or social emotional skills and regulation skills. So a lot of times parents will ask, well, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? And I'm like, he's 5. Like I expect the 5-year-old, when you take the iPad away, of course he's gonna have a tantrum. And again, getting to that growth mindset, he's learning in that moment how to cope and how to develop the skills of, like you say, life being not fair or disappointment. And now we could give him the tools. I know you're upset. You can't kick mommy, or you can't hit this person or do this thing, but you can do A, B, and C. And if you are able to calm yourself down and do these things, we can do something different. And I can praise you and reward you. And we can celebrate that, because that is a great lifelong skill.
Right. I've used this metaphor before is, imagine as adults, we go start a new job and they don't give you any instruction or direction on what to do, but they just keep telling you what not to do as you try to figure it out. Right. It's like, don't turn on this, computer, or don't touch that file. And then how would you feel at the end of the day? Right. Quite confused, frustrated.
They say it all the time. When I say it, I'm a parent. I have 2 kids of my own that are both teenagers. They don't come with manuals. We're not made to take any parenting courses, behavioral management, development courses. So we're not equipped. So we have to do the digging ourselves and find out. Most people parent the way they were parented, or go the complete opposite way if they disagreed with it. But kids, and that's the one fun thing I love about this field, it's never the same. Kids are so unique and different, and there's so many factors, and there's so many more things now that make raising children a little more complicated than 100 years ago. But the good news is we have more data and we have more resources than ever before.
Right. And I'm wondering if we, could explore what's the difference between parenting with anxiety and having that healthy worry, right? Especially, you hear first-time parents, they're worried about their child sleeping and what's happening and, needing to go look. When we talk about, well, that's normal, first-time parent anxieties. But when does it maybe become not so helpful, or maybe impact the parent's health and well-being a bit, or more,
Sure.
Again, the dynamic?
I think a good way to look at anxiety, it's on that continuum, right? Where too little anxiety is not good either, where you're just letting everything go and don't care and they'll figure it out. And hopefully, maybe, but they might not. There needs to be a little bit more guidance or a little bit more care. Too much anxiety, like you're saying, it's several fold what it's going to affect. First of all, the parents, I've worked with a lot of them. It's affecting everything. It's affecting their own well-being, their sleeping, their cortisol and stress levels, how they interact with others. So if you're stressed, your children are going to pick up on that. Your spouse is going to pick up on that, and it's going to cause more tension and relationships and the interactions themselves. And it's just going to affect everything. I try with families to look at it very practically, meaning it's situational, right? Like if we are in a war-torn country where you have to worry about your child's safety at all times, sure, you have to make sure that your child knows what to do when sirens are going off or when there's this high level of stress and anxiety. That's a safety concern, sure. The majority of people in first world countries don't really have to think about that often. Most of their anxiety and stressors have to do with grades and their children's, how it affects their children's future, college, job, whatever else. Safety, because what parents see and hear most of the time online, it's usually not happy reports and happy news. So I remember a great example because I try to take the parents through so they can see where their own anxiety comes from. The first time I remember seeing something on the news that was scary for parents was when Adam Walsh was killed here in Florida in the early 90s. And that was one of the biggest news stories I remember as a kid. And it really scared parents, but not enough to where parents said, that's it. Kids, you're not allowed to go outside and play. You can't go anywhere with your friends on your own. This is your curfew. You can't learn how to drive. You can't learn all these things. That would be too much anxiety for the parents because now it's hindering my kids' necessary development. And that's where we really talk about once the anxiety is preventing your child from doing the things they need to do to learn and grow, then it's becoming dysfunctional, problematic, whatever you want to call it. And we try to scale it back. So nowadays, for example, the big thing and worry for parents a lot has to do with technology.
Yes.
Right? So when it comes to social media and gaming and who they're talking to online, and the kids look at me like they want free reign and I'm on their side, right? I work with the kids. They should let me, this is my phone, this is my social media. And I tell them so I believe in speed limits. And they figured out speed limits for cars decades after cars were invented because people kept dying in cars. It didn't work. They needed limits and guardrails. And these were for adults. These are 16, 18, 20-year-olds. If you're 12 or 14 and you have the internet in your pocket, there needs to be boundaries and guardrails. So when it comes to anxiety, I try to shift a little bit of parents' focus of if you need more kind of limits in place for that, I'm on board. I also am kind of anxious about that because this is all new. Kids don't have the frontal lobe functioning yet to be able to self-monitor and be safe and manage their own time and energy with this. However, I also think parents have become a little too anxious about letting their kids explore the world. So I do believe kids need to bike around their neighborhood and hang out with other kids and go to the mall with friends and go to the little parties. So what I do with parents when there is that anxiety is we try to really hone in on what are you really concerned about and has it led to any action? Because if you're just frozen with this fear of, well, my kid's going to get hit by a car if he rides his bike, why don't we teach him how to not get hit by a car?
Right.
And however you want to do it, we can, because the goal eventually is when he says, yeah, I'm biking over to so-and-so's house to go fishing, you just say, okay, text me when you get there. And that's it.
Right. So having communication, discussing and talking about those boundaries and guardrails versus just removing, taking away as form of protection.
And I'm all for baby steps for both parties, right? For the child or the parent, where if the parent is not comfortable with this yet, we can scaffold. So, okay, we'll start here and then we'll slowly get there. Same with the child. If the child's wanting to do this and mom is like, no way, we can somehow compromise and slowly get to where we need, where the parent eventually feels more comfortable. Once they see the child, they can do this thing and they followed through and they were safe. Okay, I'm feeling more comfortable now.
Right. And it's creating those opportunities, which is natural for child and, teen development to negotiate, compromise.
Yep. And it's a great, I use the term again, I use a lot of the same terminology because, and it's purposeful. I want the kids, I want the parents also to kind of have it in their vernacular of it's practicing. It's practicing for adulthood. It's practicing for independence. It's practicing for your first job, relationship, hardship, stressor, where the earlier kids get to practice these skills and hone them, the better equipped they are when the consequences are more significant. Where when you mess up and you're 15, it's much easier to deal with the consequences than when you're 35.
Having children understand, about their mistakes and why it's important to learn from them.
Yeah, and framing it a way that we give them the opportunity to make the mistakes, but also to learn from the mistakes. Where, I joke with the kids going off to college, you're going to do these things, but, we don't want the mistake to be so bad that you're in jail or now you're physically really hurt. But you're going to party the night before a test or something important, and you're going to perform poorly the next day. And that's going to teach you, like, oh my God, I should have studied earlier in the day, or I should have done this or left the party a little early. And hopefully you learned and you corrected it. And that's, so a lot of times parents and society, I think in general, we focus on, the consequences and punishment and what should I do and take away the phone and give me your phone and take away the gaming and this, that, whatever, where I always remind them, the whole goal of a consequence, negative or positive, is to teach. That's it. It's to teach behavior. It's to shape a behavior in one way or the other. And if it's not linked or connected to the behavior itself, it's never going to really teach anything. So if the kid didn't study for a test and did poorly, and you say, that's it, no phone for a week, they never really connect that, oh, I need to, improve my grade, or I'll just get better grades this week so I could get my phone back. But they're not really learning. It's a misaligned incentive, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about those natural and logical consequences,
That's
right,
it.
to making some of the choices.
I remind the parents often that when your children get jobs, their bosses will never take their phone from them. And if they didn't get all their work done at work, they have to bring it home. Or if they didn't prepare for a presentation that they have to give other people in the office, it's going to look poorly on them and they might not get the raise they want or the promotion. So we need to kind of think of things as parents in the same way and meet the children where they are, where it really makes sense to them, and use what works in the real world. So if the kid says, well, I want to sleep over my friend's house Friday night, great, I want you to sleep over your friend's house, but all your schoolwork needs to be done before that. That's your job, right? As a student. And as soon as you get done with all your work, I'll take you to your friends on Friday. But if you're staying up Friday night and it's now midnight and you're still working on your work, I can't take you to your friends. It's too late. I'm not dropping you off that late. That has always made more sense. And the kids almost always, they buy into it, because the reward itself is something meaningful enough to them. The positive effects, thinking of it in different levels, like I want the kid to experience this social world. I don't want to just, no, you can't see friends. You have to study, study, study. And that's what life is kind of be like, right? It's going to be, well, I got to work and then I can play. So it's also teaching that delayed gratification, that prioritizing, that learning how to be more efficient, all those life skills that are necessary when our kids become adults.
And at what age would children start to learn from the natural and logical consequences? When do you start to sort of help with problem solving and teaching those?
Birth. No, I'm just kidding. So developmentally, and you start to see it in babies, right? Like they drop the toy and then they realize oh, this person, every time I drop the toy, they get me the toy. This is great. So really, when they're infants, babies are starting to learn. That's the whole idea of, tummy time and letting babies explore in the little world. They're tiny world, right? They're, what is it called? They're pack and play world. So that's the beginnings of it. But a lot of it's happening in preschool, of when they're getting into their little arguments with peers, and that's not fair, and taking toys from one another, and I'm not your friend anymore and you won't play with me. We tend to jump in too quickly nowadays, I find, because we want to almost squash any discourse before it happens, or any negative interactions, where teachers are very good about it for the most part of, no, they need to do this. This is how they learn. They need to learn how to navigate this. They need to learn that the consequence, you kept taking your friend's toys. Now he's not sharing with you. That is the logical consequence. But if you start sharing with him, he'll probably do the same. Now, sometimes we might have to point that out to the child, and we have to remember developmentally to keep it on their level. One thing I find, we tend to talk too much as adults, where when a kid is upset, dysregulated, whatever you want to call it, less is always more. So we want to be able to connect those dots for them and have them learn, when you yell at mommy, I don't do a good job listening because I get upset. But I'll talk to you when you're ready to talk calm, or I'll listen when you're ready to talk calm. Like very, very simple. Like it's not about our feelings. It's about, well, what's the goal here? Well, I'm upset because so-and-so took this. Okay, well, what can we do? And I know a lot of people try to kind of solve it. Well, I'll talk to them or let me talk to them. I'm like, no. These are all teachable moments, which I love that term also. That's a very big kind of growth idea of we get to teach now. This is great. Let's try it again. I know you've talked before about being, working with children. When I work with children in the office and I'm modeling for the parents, sometimes they get mortified. Oh my God, they're going in your cabinets and they're grabbing things. I'm like, yeah, right. They're 6. I expect this. That's okay. So let's teach them. Hey, if you want to go in there, you have to ask me. Do you want to try? Can I go in there? Sure. Thanks for asking.
Yes, or seeing, some of the acting out behaviors and trying to, again, diffuse it. But, I'm talking about let's experience this how it is in day to day and offer the tools and support in that moment.
And I try to really remind the parents and align with them and say, listen, I know it's embarrassing, or you have your own stuff. If you're at this play date and your child is acting a certain way and you are mortified and you feel guilty and shame, and your first instinct is to leave right when something doesn't go the way you want because you feel embarrassed, whatever. But if we keep doing that, your child's never going to learn how to cope, or never going to learn how to compromise or how to navigate the social world. So when you ask, like, what ages can those kinds of things begin at? Toddlers. You could start as young as you want. And as long as you're communicating with the other parents and you're kind of in line with each other and consistent, you'll see growth. And it's all practice. So I usually recommend to parents, I'm all for kids if they need a break. Like, let's go outside for a minute, let's reset, and let's go back in. Or maybe we need alone time, or let's sit in the car for, or whatever it is. But the goal is, no, let's try again. And then we're going to keep, and when you do the thing we want, or when you do the thing that works or that's expected or more functional, that's when we can praise and reward and all those positive things, because like all the research shows, like that will be more effective than just like, the punishment, the correction, like you said at the job. It's always better to hear, oh, that's great. Like that works. Keep doing that. That's fantastic. Versus, nope, that's wrong.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
You're not left with any direction, instruction, motivation.
Yeah.
Even as adults, we wouldn't.
Even as adults. Right. It's true.
So we're talking about parents who might be anxious and their parenting style being maybe overbearing, overprotecting. How are the children experiencing it? What do the pressures look like? What are you seeing in the day to day?
So a lot of the kids, it's very funny because a lot of times the kids are under worried, where sometimes parents are over worried, and we try to get them to meet somewhere in the middle where it's a healthy, typical, functional amount of worry. So a lot of the kids come in here and, speaking candidly, they'll be like, I think my mother's effing nuts, or like, I don't know what they're talking about. We live in this nice neighborhood. Why can't I do this? It's almost like anything the parent says, because they see that constant level of worry, even if they might be correct of certain things, they think it's an exaggeration, because they're also kids and teenagers, and the teenage brain, there's a reason, car insurance is a fortune for teenage boys, right? Like it's because of their brain. I remind them, like, you're probably a little under worried about this thing. Let's say it's going off to college. Your mom is worried you're never going to go to class because you've never woken up on your own. You're not going to feed yourself. You're not going to remember to do your own homework. You don't know how to study. You're not going to know how to make new friends. You're not going to network. And you're going to end up back at home, kicked out of college in 6 weeks. That's probably an over-exaggeration. But based on what we've observed, you definitely have some skills you need to work on. So let's meet somewhere in the middle and let's see what you can practice right now where mom or dad will get a little more comfortable. Their anxiety can maybe subside a little and you can bring your level of care or concern. I won't call that anxiety, but let's bring that up where, yeah, okay, I'm going to work on this thing. Maybe I need to care a little bit more. Maybe this is more important than I'm thinking. For some, it trickles down. So the parents are super worried. And then they're told by a lot of these schools, how hard everything is and the demands and this, that, whatever. So then the kid then experiences it themselves. So now their worry and their level of anxiety and stress is up here. And like we said before, and I'll remind them, if you are this stressed, you cannot perform at your best. It is almost impossible. So then we have to bring everyone down a little bit where it's more typical.
Right. So it's helping both parents and children find that balance.
Right. And acknowledging and validating and kind of reminding them where it comes from and what they're hearing so they realize this isn't some amorphous, abstract thing that came out of nowhere. Like, no, you're hearing this in the news or you have your own experiences and you have this and this is what created and causes. But let's look at it very realistically and very practically now. Then the worry can come down a little because we remind them like worrying does serve a purpose. Anxiety, we evolved with anxiety. It kept us alive as humans as we evolved in the last million years. But when it is there, when we don't need it, and if it's not serving a purpose and it's not functional, then it's harming us. And we need to deal with it and learn to cope with it. And that's okay. Like that's a typical part of life. It's fine. We don't have to completely eradicate it. A little bit of worry is fine. You're a little worried you're going to be late for school, so you rush. Good. You should be.
Right. And we talked about helping children and youth develop skills for their day-to-day. How can parents help children and youth benefit from developing skills in the school setting? Like I'm just thinking about your blog post and article around helping children advocate at school and talking to teachers. I remember my own experience being anxious, like feeling intimidated talking to teachers or scared. Like how can parents help children build those skills?
Well, what's great now is there's more ways to communicate than ever. So we could always find what works best for a child and we can grow upon that. Nowadays, in most of the schools, I'm guessing in multiple countries, by the time a kid is in 6th grade, the teachers don't want to hear from parents anymore. They want the children either messaging them on whatever program they're using through school, their email systems, or sending notes through, again, some digital format, or if it's in person. So I oftentimes with a lot of kids will figure out what's hard for them and what they need. So we always talk about, number one, the team. Like, we need a team and a team works. So the team might be mom, tutor, the teacher I'm really comfortable with, coach, guidance counselor, best friend, whoever. So we look to as, well, what's the goal? Well, I need to be able to ask for extra help because I have no idea what this teacher is talking about. Like, okay, so we have some options here. That's what we need to do. Would you like to do that with a friend in person? Maybe during an off period where not everyone's watching you. Do you need to email the teacher and ask them that way so it's not in front and they can respond to you and you can figure out a time? Does it need to be after school? Do you need to do it in the middle of class while everyone's working on something and no one's really looking at you so you don't feel like all eyes are on you? So that I really like the problem solving approach instead of just, well, you just need to do this. Because when you get the kid to start problem solving with you and coming up with solutions, their anxiety is going to come down because they feel like they're part of it and they feel like they're being heard and they have a say, and they could still be a little uncomfortable. So we kind of talk about, well, what's a little uncomfortable, but not way too uncomfortable. For some, raising their hand and just saying, I don't get it in front of the whole class, that might not work. That's too stressful. So we don't have to do that. Instead of, well, you need to learn to do that. Well, no, you don't need to learn to do that. You can do this in multiple ways. So we'll find what works for you. But unless we're communicating and we're all being able to share and be open and honest, it's not going to work. So there needs to be that space where there's no judgment. We're figuring out what works. So I write about that a lot. Like I use that term very often with kids because it's a very good term where we don't get stuck on like bad, good, wrong, right. It's Well, we'll find what works. Well, this worked. So navigating the school world or the academic world, whether it's middle school, high school, or even higher ed, we're just finding what works. And it might be different in different settings. So we have a lot of tools we can choose. Maybe with this teacher, really scary, really intimidating, I'm emailing it. Like, I don't want to talk to them. Anytime I talk to them, it looks like they want to kill me. Versus this other teacher, oh, I have no problem raising my hand in her class. It's so chill. And it's just got that vibe to it, and it's easy and no problem. So we find what works.
And I really like how you're talking about having a team, right? So at school, feeling like there's a sense of a team and the student feeling heard. Because I think there's a lot of students out there that fear asking for help, that don't know how, are not comfortable with that. So it's important, I think, for adults to support being okay with that and building that team.
It's very funny that we haven't looked at what works for these big organizations and businesses and companies because it's still people. And the ones that are really successful and have the highest rates of satisfaction and growth, camaraderie, connectivity are the ones where the employees from new to 30 years in feel that they're part of a team, feel supported, feel that they can talk to whoever they need to talk to. If they have problems, that they'll be solved and respected, and that they're never alone and they're never asked to, well, you need to do this thing by yourself and don't even think about asking for help because this is all on you.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work. So you go to any of the best hospitals or tech companies or anywhere else, they will tell you their model is built around support and training and team building and cooperation. Where in the schools, it's interesting most if you even look at the way that they're set up. Like you are at a desk by yourself. You are not talking to anyone. You are working.
Right.
So it's not even when they're younger, it's fostered a bit. You know, you're sitting at a table with 4 other kids and there's some group projects. But I try to get the kids' mindset to shift on teams always work. You know, more heads, the better. The more brains, the better. Where we try to get the parents to also model it, where they can say out loud, you know what? I'm not sure about this thing. I'm going to get in touch with my broker or my real estate person or my friend who's an attorney has great experience. I'm going to have him over and we're going to talk about this and figure it out. So I don't just try to do it on my own and get frustrated. So the more they see us do it, we normalize it, then they won't feel that something's wrong if they have to ask for help.
That's a great idea. Modeling and normalizing, asking for help, communicating, reaching out, getting that support and problem solving.
I love doing it where I have the parents ask the kids for help, where it's usually technology based. I'm doing it right now with my 77-year-old father, where I have to retrain him or reteach him every day how to use the remote control for the Amazon Fire Stick for all of the apps on our TV. Even if you know how to do the thing, you can ask your 12-year-old, like, you know what? I'm trying to create this reel online for my business. I have no idea. Like, can you show me how to do this? Like, because I could figure it out on my own. It's going to take me 4 hours and I'm going to break my phone because I'm going to get so frustrated. And now you're modeling for them like, oh, this adult, this expert who knows everything, they need to come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah,
it gives
helps
your child,
people feel good.
right? It gives them the opportunity to feel good and to teach and like, oh, like, and it's amazing. I've seen it here where all of a sudden that 12-year-old, you see, they kind of mature up a little bit. They rise up to meet that challenge. And it really is great for the relationship.
So many different ways to sort of be creative. Asking for help as a parent,
Yeah.
getting feedback or support can help as well, fostering that growth,
Absolutely.
learning.
Yeah.
So when it comes to parents supporting children and youth, why are boundaries so important, especially for teens, to let go a bit and maybe, allow consequences there? Or, hear parents say, should I go in my child's room and clean and look for stuff? Hear a teen say, my parents came across my diary and read it, right? So let's perhaps we could talk about
I
boundaries
always
there.
ask the parents, so if you're going to live with them forever and do those things, sure. So if you want to room with them in college and you're going to live with them with their family and you're going to continue to do these things their whole life, and then after you're gone, somebody else is going to do it for them. And they always look at me and they're just like, I see what you're doing. And I'm like, right. The whole goal is always, what do we want our child to leave under, like leave our roof, leave our care, whatever else? What do we want them to be able to do? What kind of boundaries and limits and routines do they have to know how to do in very practical terms? So like, will your child ever need to learn how to clean their room and organize it and keep it neat? Most likely, yes, unless they're very, very wealthy and can hire maids and butlers and cleaning people and whatever else. That's not most people. So we always have that in mind of their life skills, right? Like, what life skills will your child need to be able to live healthily, productively, in an organized way that works for them? There's wiggle room, obviously, and there's every child's different. So some children develop those skills. They have it. Parents don't have to do anything. Others, I know it's parents, they want to go in and do like, oh my God, their room's a disaster. It's making me I can't have their room a mess. Like, I get it. And we joke like in the field and say, that's a you issue. That's not a kid. They don't care that it's a mess. Like, you're
Right.
the one getting stressed and now you're doing it. That's not working. Like, we need to teach them. And then it gets back again to modeling, compromising, like, we could clean your room together. How do we want to do it? Even when it comes to the diary thing, like a lot of times parents ask the same thing about seeing their kids' phones, right? The boundaries and limits. When should I let them do this? When should I be able to look at their phone? It's complicated. And I tend to lean a little more on the conservative side with that because these are children. They're under 18. And this is the first time in the history of the world that they have all of this technology and information at their fingertips, and their brains have not evolved with it over the last however many years. Brains are the same as they were 50 years ago. They haven't evolved so much. So when it comes to the technology piece, and I tell the kids, like, I believe there needs to be more boundaries and more limits. So yes, if your parents want access to everything on your phone, yeah. But if you need privacy, your diary or something else, sure, you want to write your private thoughts. But I try to help families and promote from an early age to have an environment in the home where if there is something pretty upsetting going on or stressful, that's kind of severe, that the child can reach out to whoever they need to, whether it's a best friend or a family member or someone in school. And I know that's where a lot of the worry comes in, right? Well, I have to read their diary. What if they wrote something bad?
Right.
Or what if they're doing something I don't approve of? Where, well,
In a
don't
group
read,
chat or
right? Right. Where I think that's one of the hardest things I think for our generation to know, all right, what can or can't we do? Like, of course, don't go into your 16-year-old's room if they're changing. Well, it's my house. I could go and like, yeah, they deserve that kind of privacy. And that's where, like, again, that communication I think is very important on, well, where are the boundaries? And when your kid is 18 and living in college, are you going to go up in their dorm room and look through everything and go through their drawers and look in everything else? Like, probably not. So it starts early, right? It starts way before that of developing and building all those skills and setting those limits and boundaries and slowly having them expand a little. It's easy to do when you're thinking driving, right? Like, I'll let my kid drive within city limits until they're really good. No tickets, no accidents. Okay, we've done that. Now you can drive within the county. No tickets, no accidents. Good. Now you can do the tri-county. Very measurable, very easy to expand. It's a physical boundary. We could think of
right.
the same thing in terms of technology, social world, curfew, things like that, where the eventual goal is, remember, they are going to be completely on their own at some point. Now, they can always come to you for help, but they're not going to be living under your roof, and you're not going to know where they are or where they're going at all times.
And a lot of parents have concern too about alone time and spending a lot of time in their room,
Yeah.
especially for teenagers, and how to set a boundary there. So just
I
wondering.
feel the same way, and I hear it's funny because the term, I think it's called doom scrolling. Right, it's
Yes.
one of the terms I've learned in the last year. It's a great thing of working with teens. I learned so many terms, and then I tell the other teen, I'm like, I learned what this is, and like, oh my God, don't say, because a lot of them are like inappropriate. Or I remind or they say like, well, there's nothing to do or it's boring. And I say, like, if mom gave you the option, you could hang out with your friends at the mall or you could stay under your covers and scroll through TikTok. Most of them will say, like, yeah, I'd rather go to the mall with my friends, but they're not allowed or they're overscheduled and all these things. Or mom won't let me because she thinks I'm going to get kidnapped or killed or blah, 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 or I'm going to steal something. Where I remind the parents, like, Yes, I don't think it's healthy for your child to be alone in a room with a phone too long. If they need, I just need an hour to just scroll through these stupid videos. It's my own escape, meditation, whatever, like limits, right? Like balance and everything.
Right.
But yes, you also need time to socialize. You also need time not in your room. You also need time with the family. And that's where the compromise and the communication comes in, where I love the idea. They use it in parent training courses and classroom management, forced choices, right? Like A or B. You can't be in your room anymore. Like you've been alone, like that's enough, or that's enough screen time. And I'm all for it. You want to put limits on your kids' phones. I'll be the first one to back. And I tell the kids, like, yes, I think there should be limits on your phone. But then I look at the parent and I say, but you need to let your kid go out more.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the compromise, and that's where kids, I think, will be more amenable to the idea of, fine, I'll go on my phone less, but I'm getting more freedom here. That usually works pretty well because they'll say, yeah, I'd rather go to my friend's house and the five of us are hanging out and we're in the pool and we're doing this whatever together than being alone on TikTok, seeing everyone else have fun. It's just harder now for us as the parents. And I'm seeing, a small sample size where I live, but like typical suburban, whatever, it's work for us to coordinate this if our kids don't drive yet. And if the parents are more nervous than us. So one of the things I write about is we as the parents have to get the other parents comfortable enough with us to let their kid come over our house so they can hang out and go in the pool and play and run around the neighborhood. So that's work for me, but it's worth
Mm-hmm.
it. So I've built the relationship with these parents so they're comfortable enough with me. I've had them over. They've met my kids. They've met me half a dozen times. So when their son or daughter says, hey, can we hang out at Dave's kid's house? Sure, yeah, I know Dave. Yeah, I got a good feeling of him. If they didn't know me, usually the answer is, well, no. Because again, that anxiety comes in and that fear comes in.
Trust.
Right. So when the parent says, well, get off your phone, you're in your room too long, kids are going to say, well, what do you want me to do? That's why I hear a lot of parents, and we've seen it now the last two generations, that kind of overscheduling of it's just,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, well, it's school, tutoring, practice, homework, shower, food, bed.
Yes.
Right. So then when the
Sports in
kid is
there.
on the phone, yeah, when the kid is on the phone on a Saturday for 4 hours in a row, and the parent's like, you've been on your phone like for 4 hours. Yeah, because they've had none of that freedom, unstructured time that they need during the week, of course. And you're not giving them the opportunity to do the things they should be doing. Like, I want to bike around the neighborhood and go fishing in the canals, or I want to like hang out at the mall with my friends. And then we walked over to this Starbucks and we got something to drink. And then we went here. Like, of course they're going to be on their phone instead.
Very true. Children and teens will share not having any of that downtime. A lot of ways that people do have downtime, even adults, is
It's true.
scrolling, video games.
And kids understand the idea of balance. So it makes sense to them, like, oh, you did your work in school and then we have recess. We are doing this hard thing and then we're celebrating and having this whatever party. It makes sense. And it's easy to get parents to buy into it and to kind of implement it when it is a little more almost like a 1-to-1 type of ratio or 2-to-1 or whatever it is where it's measurable. So yeah, I need an hour or two of alone time. Okay, you got your hour or two of alone time in a room on screen. Now you need some unstructured non-tech time. Or you've had enough alone time. Now you need some time. You don't have to hang out with all the people and talk to everyone, but you need to be in some kind of social setting because that's the world. And whether you have severe social anxiety or anything else, we need you to adapt to it. We can give you tools, but you need to get used to this setting.
And I'm wondering, how can parents let go, teach that independence without feeling guilty or that they're abandoning their child in some way?
I think what's helped at least a lot of the families I've worked with is if they think what they're doing is what's best for their child, even if it's painful or even if it makes them feel a certain way, if they can really look at it and say, they're developing this skill and it's good for them. So almost like my kid needs this shot and it will make them better, but they're going to cry when they get the shot and it's going to hurt for 20 seconds, but it's going to improve their health or their functioning or whatever else. So that little bit of discomfort. I might feel guilty or I might feel bad, but this is good for my kid because now they're getting the opportunity to develop these skills, to learn. And those are the things, the self-esteem boom that happened in the 70s and 80s that really stuck with the generation, where I remind them, like, well, what builds self-esteem? It's self-reliance and independence and having a skill set where you can initiate friendships and keep friendships and feel like you can achieve and accomplish things on your own. So when they're reminded of that and keep that in mind when they're doing whatever it is they're doing that might make them feel guilty or bad or remorseful, it's easier for them. And then they remind the kid, they remind themselves, like, I know this is hard, but I'm so proud of you. And this is so great that you were able to get through this thing, even though it was hard. That really helps. And it helps for them to hear it, because in the moment, even as us adults, when we're dysregulated and our emotions are taking over, that logic and rational thinking is not working so well.
Right. I was wondering if you could share about your book, Raising Future Adults, and maybe what you found in the research, or if you can give some examples of coping tools or helpful tips that parents could
Sure,
find.
sure, sure. So yeah, the real impetus for the book itself and the title, some of it's personal. Of course, we bring a lot of our own stuff, and seeing how certain people are raised or certain kids are raised and seeing generationally the differences. The last 20 or 30 years of 20 years plus for me of working with kids and seeing the trends of we are raising future adults. And the more we do for them, the less skills they'll have to become functional adults. So seeing the trends go up of teenage anxiety and depression, seeing trends go up of teenage suicidality and self-harm, seeing trends go up of dissatisfaction, of overall stress, of lack of social connectivity and friendships. That was really a lot of the meat that I wanted to focus on in the book, and focus on, well, whose job is it to help with these things? It's us. I hear in the news all the time, everyone wants to say, well, this causes this problem and this is this. It's always focusing problem, problem, problem. Like, this is what's wrong. No one's talking about, well, what can we do? So a lot of what I focus on the book is very practical, real life things, strategies that we can do as the adults in our kids' lives from when they're born all the way to when they're young adults. Some of it focuses even on, well, what do I need to do for me as the adult in their life for my own self-care so I can be a better parent? What do I need to model that my kids are seeing? And it doesn't have to be perfect. I always remind them, when you feel bad about yelling or doing something you shouldn't, now's a great time that we could model forgiveness and asking for forgiveness and apologies and restoration of relationships. So even if we mess up, right? Because parents say, oh my God, I lost my temper, I feel horrible. Like, yeah, now we get to teach them, like, listen, I'm not perfect. I yelled, I apologize, I shouldn't have lost my temper. I'm really sorry. Like, I shouldn't have done that. I hope you can forgive me. I'm going to work on it. And you'll see your kid starts doing the same thing because you're modeling it for so long. So a lot of the techniques I talk about in the book are, well, what can we model? What can they see us do? What can we teach? Right? What can we directly show or directly teach? How can we set boundaries, and how can we set routines, and how can we be consistent in a way that works for us with the ultimate goal in place, and with always the idea of it's not going to be perfect. So if something doesn't work that first time or it doesn't go the way you want, that's okay. This is hard. There's no manual. There's no, well, if you do this, this does this every time. It's not that way. So it's almost like a little bit of a guide to help you through, well, what do I do? And the way that I separate it into 3 different sections, looking at behaviors, looking at social emotional skills, looking at skills necessary for kind of like that later on, okay, you're about to go into adulthood. What am I going to do? How do I want to be there and support my children as they grow up and become more independent?
Right. And I think that's really helpful for parents when they're not sure, okay, how do I now parent a young adult, right? That's still living at home. What does that dynamic look like? So I appreciate lots of parents would find that section
Yeah.
helpful.
And it follows a very, very basic principle of, technically, we as parents, we're caregivers, sure, we're there to protect, we're teachers, right? Our kids, 1/3 of their life is in school. The other third is going to be with their parents, and the other third's going to be asleep, hopefully. Now,
Right.
as they get older, that one third with us starts to go down, where they're more with their teammates and their friends and coaches and whatever else. But the more opportunities that we have to teach, let's take advantage of it.
Right. And what are some ways you think parents could cope or feel more empowered in trying to be less, maybe overprotective?
I think this is a great start. I think listening to the podcast, I think getting information, I think reading books about, well, what does the research show? A lot of this is just based on feeling, right? We're humans. There's all this emotion, there's technology, there's news, there's all this noise where I want parents, like you said, to feel empowered, to know what to do. And a lot of that comes from collaborating with others, connecting with others. You don't have to do any of this on your own. Go to workshops, talk to other parents, join school organizations, go to trainings or teachings. There's free stuff online, there's YouTube channels. There's plenty of stuff at religious schools and colleges and institutions, community organizations. There's so much out there now compared to even 50 years ago, which is not a long time ago. It seems like it. There was none of this. The only thing they had back then, I think, was that What to Expect When You're Expecting book by Dr. Spock. That was it.
Yes.
That's it. So now we have more resources. So as parents, what really helps is education, knowledge, information, facts. And the more we have, the better equipped we are. And then a lot of times it'll set us at ease and we can really learn like, oh, okay, like this is shown to really be helpful for these kids. So the research shows a lot. And a lot of what I write about, it's based on a lot of the research that I found either through psychology organizations like the school psych ones or APA, college research, more broad studies, but very simple principles. Kids usually perform better when they feel connected, right? These basic we have figured out that works. That reduces rates of all these negative things we talked about. Kids feel more satisfied with life when they feel a part of something, a team, a group, some friends, their class, the family, whatever. So using those kind of basic principles a lot of times helps parents feel less anxious about, well, I don't know what my kid's doing, or I'm nervous. What if they get so stressed and they get depressed and they have thoughts of hurting themselves? Well, let's do the things to put things in place to prevent that. We know what works. Let's do it. Let's let that lead to some good action. And then they feel empowered. And then they feel like, okay, my kid now knows what to do, that if they're in a bad way, they know how to reach out. They know what to do for them. I trust that. I feel better. I can go to sleep at night and put my head on the pillow and not just ruminate about all these worries as a parent, which many do.
Right. Again, that's, our brain kind of naturally does that as a way to cope with things. But like you said, there's so many great tools out there
Yeah.
as well to help. And I'm wondering where parents can find you or learn more about your holistic approach, about these exercises
Sure.
and ways
So
that they
very
can
easy.
connect.
So my website, it's called Raising Future Adults. So if you just Google it or put it into your browser, Raising Future Adults, you could find me on LinkedIn under my name, David Krasky, Instagram. On the website itself, I have blogs that I usually write about an article a week. I keep it short, I keep it simple, and I keep it pretty similar in the format to the book, where it's here's a topic. This is what the research kind of shows. This is what's going on. Here's some things that have been proven to be really helpful and useful. Let's summarize it. So easy to read.
That's great. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much today for the conversation, David. It's really helpful. And I know that
Thank
a lot of
you
parents will find the information helpful.
for what you do and having this available for families and teens and young adults. This is wonderful. Thanks. I can't wait.